Hey folks, it's Nick Bouton with Planted TV. Remember that pot I made in my last video? I'm gonna put it to use now. If you haven't seen my last video, check it out up here. If you have, you're probably wondering what I was gonna do with that Roma tomato plant that was just sitting there idly by. We're gonna put this pot to use. Check it out. This is Nick with Planted TV, and now we're gonna show you how to pot up a tomato plant, Roma tomato in my case, in this nifty, full of holes pot that we just created. Now we have our newly fashioned pot. There it is. Look at that guy. And we've got this lovely Roma tomato. Now see, I picked up this Roma tomato plant from a hardware store, actually. They had it for sale. It was sitting out in the discount lane. It looks pretty good. I mean, it's a little on the smaller side, but I think I've had this for about a week sitting just outside my garage. And it's probably time to get into a pot that's bigger because right now it's draining all of its water very, very quickly. So my new pot, it's decent size here. Should be able to hold it nicely. I've got some tools, so let's get going. The reason I used a 5/8 inch hole on here is because I didn't want everything to fall out on the way through. So I'm popping in my dirt. I've got some, this is what I can get locally, Miracle Grow potting mix. It's do the job, just make sure you're using potting mix and not, and it's a container mix as opposed to something you're going to use in a flower bed or whatnot. Let's get them out in there. So we got our potting mix. I've got a couple of things I'm going to throw in there as well. This is pretty thick mix. I've used this one before. I find it gets a little heavy with water. I'd like to mix in a little bit of sphagnum, peat moss at the same time, and a little bit of compost, and that makes it nice, thick enough to retain water, but still it drains nicely. And the compost adds some organic material in there. I have my enriched sphagnum. I love that name. It reminds me of Magnum PI for some random reason. Anyways, peat moss. So peat moss is really good for lightening heavy soils and seeding mixes. So in this case, this is pretty heavy. As you can see, it's pretty thick. It's kind of clumpy. And when you get it wet, it really gets a little too thick. So I prefer to add a little bit of the sphagnum and just mix it in here. So I probably do this is pretty full as it is. We've got a decent amount of dirt in here. I may not keep the whole thing. I'll pop in about a quarter of the container worth of sphagnum. This is a cool trick. Having not really used a cultivator much with any real purpose behind it previously, when I started figuring out how to use these guys, very handy. So it's not just for pulling and raking things with. It's actually for mixing. Works really well for mixing dirt. Pop it in here and just twist. Does a great job of mixing different soil types together. So at the same time as I'm doing this, I'm going to grab a little bit of compost. Worm castings. I find this works super well. It's really dark. Really feels like it's got a lot of organic material in there. This is just me. Could be full of crap, Again, no pun intended. Mix in a bit of this at the same time. I know it's a little thicker than the sphagnum, but hopefully it counteracts a little bit and it keeps it reasonably not too heavy. So mix that in a little bit there. Kind of blend it all together. I'll fast forward this, but you keep doing this for a couple of minutes. All right, there we go. Now, looks pretty similar, I'm sure. Not a whole lot of dirt falling out of my holes, but water will drain nicely out of those now. So I'm gonna take a little bit of the dirt out of the middle here, just while I'm working on it. Take a bit out of the center. Now I've seen this trick is pretty neat as well, and I've seen this done in a variety of places. It kind of blew my mind the first time I saw it. Honestly, hadn't even thought of it. It's kind of a stupid thing too. But you know what? I'll try it here. I may have to take a little bit more dirt out just to work. So it sounds like a no-brainer, but to put the old pot into the new pot, kind of dig it down a bit. Now the other way you can do this is to pour the mix in around it, but since I was trying to mix this and I didn't have it pre-mixed, this does the job reasonably well at the same time. So I do that. I've got a pretty good pot-shaped hole in there. Now if I pop this guy out, so again, if you've never done this before, and I'm sure most of you have, but if you haven't, give your pot a squeeze. Now this is what came from the nursery, or in this case the hardware store where I got it from. Give it a good squeeze. If it happens to be root bound, at the bottom or the top or anywhere, kind of get it off the edges a little bit, and off the bottom. Okay, you can use your foot if you want to. You really don't want to damage the plant, but there we go. So it should loosen it up well enough that you can just pop the whole thing out. So this guy, he's not particularly root bound. Actually looks really good. So you can see there, when plants tend to get root bound, you start to see a lot of roots circling the bottom here. This is just kind of right at the right time to be moving this guy out. So as you can see here, I'm a little on the high side, so I'm going to take a little bit of extra dirt out of here before I continue. There we go. That should be better. So, take this guy back out. And I'm probably going to break off the bottom a little bit just because I feel like there's a lot of extra dirt here. So let's go and clear some of this off. There we go. Yeah, be careful holding that stem too. You don't want the plant to get damaged at the same time. There we go. I'm starting to get the top layer off, and I'm going to cover this top layer that I'm pulling off with a bit of the compost as well. Yeah, I'll probably rip the bottom off a little bit here too. Get rid of some of that. This does not hurt the plant. Okay, it just promotes some regrowth at the bottom there. Yeah, so you can see a few of the roots coming out of the bottom. There's plenty of roots. It's going to work its way around. If you're afraid like I was, you realize that this is not hurting anything. And here you go. So now I think we should be in pretty good shape. There we go. That looks perfect. All right. So I'll move this guy over a little bit because I find it's a little bit shifted towards one side of the pot. So I'm going to try and center it a little bit here. There we go. That looks a lot better. Now we're going to backfill the dirt we took out. Make sure we cover any roots that are visible here. There's some roots showing. I can cover those up a little bit, but I'm going to make sure that the dirt level is about even with what the original pot had. Okay, so you don't want leaves in the pot. That's just going to gather bugs. It's going to gather disease from the soil. When you water it, the leaves will kind of splash back from the dirt. Let's pat this down a bit. We're going to water it in afterwards as well. A couple of reasons to water things at night. I kept this pretty dry beforehand, and since the weather's been pretty hot the last few days here in Vancouver, my plants have been drinking a lot of water. And particularly tomato plants, they really, really love their water. And this guy specifically was pretty dry, even though I watered him last night. So less than 24 hours and it's completely dry. So there we go. Now you can see I left about an inch and a half below the edge of the pot to be able to water it without it overflowing. And the last thing I'm going to do here is the worm castings. So I'm going to pop a little bit of this on top here, kind of right around the base of the plant. So when you water it in, some of that organic material will go in, promote the nutrients getting down into the root system. And put a little bit of that on top. It's nice and dark too. Really feels like kind of thick and mulchy. And still keeping the soil level reasonably low below the edge here. And the very last thing I'm going to do is I've got some mulch. So this is, I think, some Scott's mulch. And it's kind of brown, very thick, lots of pieces of wood chips and chunks. Feels like kind of the forest floor, right? That's kind of the idea. So I'm going to spread that around. Now, the reason I'm doing this mulch, helps to keep the moisture in, especially on these hot days that we've had here in the last little while, that we're going to have for the rest of this, at least for the next week or two. The mulch helps to, when you water, keep the moisture in the soil as opposed to evaporating out really quickly. It also keeps some of the disease away, just kind of by proxy being there. So, like I said, tomatoes are pretty susceptible to catching things on their lower leaves, whether it's bugs, whatever else. But this way, watering it in, the soil isn't hit directly by whatever you're watering. So you're going to have the mulch kind of capture it, so the rebound effect of the water coming up will not be as bad. So this guy, I will now water in. Do that. There you go. Watering him in. And you want to water basically until you see water start to pool on top. And that way, you know it's soggy all the way through. And that way also the soil settles. and you don't have a whole bunch of air pockets in here, which would be very bad for the root system. So you want to make sure the water gets all the way through, and I'll continue watering this off camera. But yeah, that's it. And I hope you enjoyed it, and hope you learned something. If you did, you know what? Leave a like. If you didn't, please leave a comment. Let me know what I can do better next time. And feel free to subscribe. Hopefully I'll be producing these videos or something of this style every week, a couple times a week. And hope you guys learned something and find it useful. Hey there, home gardeners. It's Nick from Transplanted TV. Just wanted to give you a quick update on my Roma tomato. It's been about 3 weeks since I repotted it into a nice bigger fresh pot. Just wanted to show you what it's looking like now. We're first week of September, and I think I repotted it right around the middle of August. So here goes. This guy's actually looking great. It's been a little hot today here, and wilted a little bit in the weather. I gave it some water kind of towards the end of the day here just to make it perk up a bit, but it's probably, I'd say, doubled in size since I transplanted it. You can see it's got some flowers on it, looking like it's going to start popping out some Roma tomatoes very soon. Yeah, even I'd say arguably too big for this pot at this point already, and this was just 3 weeks ago that we transplanted it. So thought that might be kind of a cool little bonus throw in for you guys at the end of the video. Thanks for watching, and please click like and subscribe if you are interested in seeing more of this kind of content. Every little bit helps the channel grow. If you'd like to see more, I'll post some updates as we go through September and into October, and hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. It's Nick from Transplanted TV.